if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is, we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But you know, if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, uh, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good evening and welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. On this, it is Tuesday the 18th, which is what the fuck is it's Nintendo Direct Day. That's what we're doing here. We had a Nintendo Direct. I think when all is said and done, we will look back on this Direct as the last main Direct, and I'm probably wrong. Um, but I think we'll look back on this as the last main Direct for what's it called, for the Nintendo Switch, because a lot got announced today, a lot more than I thought was going to be announced. Um, Considering where we are in the Switch's life cycle. Which is what we're going to talk about mostly here. Let's talk about some of the announcements. We're not going to get into too many of the indies. We're going to talk about mainly the big titles from Nintendo. But like, let's talk about what we have here. So we have Mario and Luigi Brothership, which is so weird that this is coming as late in the Switch's life cycle as it is, because and they pointed out in the trailer, it's the first Mario and Luigi game in 9 years. We didn't get a Mario and Luigi game on the Switch at any point during its life cycle. And that's kind of surprising to me. And it's weird considering how many RPGs we've gotten from Mario in the last year. Because in the last year, we will have gotten Super Mario RPG, which was the port of the Square Enix game, or the Squaresoft, I'm sorry, game that, was on the SNES. Thousand Year Door, which came out last month. And then this in, I believe, October, which is another Mario and Luigi RPG. I think the last new one was Paper Jam. And the the weird thing about this is, why do they backload it so much instead of spacing it out along the console's history? Um, so that was the first thing. I think the game looks great. Like, it looks so different, but still uniquely in that same franchise, the Mario and Luigi RPG franchise, that it just kind of was baffling that it's like, oh, so this is going to be one of the last games on this console. Because let's be real, the Switch 2 is, is gonna, gonna be reasonably soon. The other big one was this Legend of Zelda game, which is weird because it's like, I know this can't be a direct response to Tears of the Kingdom and the amount of fun people have with Tears of the Kingdom with the solving your own, solving the game as it is. It's fantastic they managed to create a trend and then know that trend was going to hit and then capitalize it in this way, because this new thing, Wisdom of Echoes or Echoes of Wisdom, or where you play as Zelda and you have to use this thing to create echoes of things to stack and jump on. It's a really interesting conundrum. And I like, the gameplay is gonna be kind of fun. I'm just curious as to how well it's gonna work. And it's in the style of Link's Awakening Director's Cut and for the Switch a few years ago. It like there's no way they could have known that it was going to hit that it was. I mean, they had to have assumed it was going to hit that part of Tears of the Kingdom, and it does, and it works very well. So it makes sense that they're like, okay, let's do that. But there's no way they could have done this in that short amount of time, and it looks great. Um, so that's all kind of cool. That all of that's there. So that's something that's cool there. Then there's this new Mario Party game, which was just the third because there was Super Mario Party. I feel like there was another Mario Party, and then this one. But this one has like a decathlon mode where you're playing against 20 other people. Now I don't know if the Switch's Online can actually handle that because the Switch's Online is not great, but I'm curious as to how that will play when we do get our hands on it later this year. But that's another one where it's like, oh, that's another major franchise. This feels like a victory lap for the Switch in a big way. Because what was the other one? There's Donkey Kong Country, what's called Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is for the Wii that's being ported. So that's cool. And then Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4 is coming out on the Switch in late this year. I'm sorry, in next year, in 2025. But like, I, there's still a few things I'm kind of baffled by when it comes to the Nintendo Switch as we get closer and closer to the end of the Switch's life. Number one, I think the Switch branding is going to stay. I think we're going to stick with Switch Online. I think the Switch Online expansion and all that are going to stay, and it's going to carry over to the next generation. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the bridge title. Um, Either that or Pokemon Legends Z-A is going to be the bridge title between the Switch and the Switch 2, where it comes out on both, is better on the Switch 2 than it is on the Switch, but is what's it called? Is kind of the same. Um, um, and I think that like it it puts us in a weird situation in general. I think that this direct confirms backward compatibility for the Switch 2 because I don't think you released this many games this close to the new console if someone buys the new console and they can't play all of these games that came out in the last year. And I'm not talking like smaller releases, these are big first party titles. Mario and Luigi's a first party title. Metroid Prime's a first party title. Um, Legend of Zelda is a first party title. This Pokemon game next year is a second party title, but technically I think we could consider Pokemon the first party with Nintendo at this point. So I think this confirms backward compatibility in a serious way. Um, I think the other big thing that this does is it reassures that we're gonna have a lot of this going on for a while, and I think we're gonna have a pretty solid like I'm still baffled by the fact that Switch Online is so lacking in some of the backward compatible titles. Like again, I've talked about this before when we talk about Pokemon games. Why has the Game Boy Advance section not added Pokemon Pinball, Pokemon Red Rescue Team, um, or any of the actual titles that have come out? Like any of the mainline titles. Why do we just have Stadium and Puzzle League? And Snap. Like there are so many titles that aren't being included. Why are these the ones that are being kind of left there? It's a weird situation to be in. And the Game Boy Advance has such a deep back catalog of titles that I'm starting to get to the point where I'm thinking if we don't have a title on there, it's because they want to make it backward. They're not making it backward compatible. They want to remake it. Otherwise, like, why else do we not have the like? Hang on, let me grab my Switch real quick. Like looking at the list of the Game Boy Advance games and looking at what we have here, like excluding the games that they don't have the rights to, it's like Wario Land 4 is not on here. Yeah, WarioWare Inc. is, but WarioWare 4 is not on here yet. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Is Kirby and the Amazing Mirror on here? It is. Okay, that's fine. Mario Tennis isn't. Mario Golf isn't. Advance Wars isn't, but Advance Wars got remade. No Donkey Kong Country. Like, of course, there's going to be games that they can't, what's it called, that they can't bring over because they're not, first party titles or things that people still have a contract with. But, it feels weird that we don't have all of these titles that have, that haven't made their way over yet. I mean, Zero Mission's getting ported over now, but like the fact that Mario Golf isn't on there feels like an oversight. Like, and Four Swords come around, but like no Castlevania. Like it's one of those things where it's like, why are these not on there still? And I think the biggest glaring omission continues to be the lack of Pokemon games, and I feel like I'm just complaining about that, which doesn't feel quite right. But at the same time, it is a glaring omission not even to have the spin-off games moving over. And I don't know why that is. Like, I can understand the thought process if it's like, look, we can't port Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire, Red, Leaf, Green. Um, and it just feels kind of like a glaring omission. Now, the N64, on the other hand, we're starting to add titles too. Now we have Perfect Dark, which I'm going to play because I've never played um, Perfect Dark. But biggest N64 games, if we look at that, like, games, like Diddy Kong Racing's still not on there, which feels weird, all things considered. Um, like, there's a lot of massive omissions there. And again, feels weird, all things considered. Are we in the situation where we're, if the game, are we at the point now? Because I think that, like, I talked about, Pokemon Red Rescue Team, and that's not on there. Well, the reason for that is because Red Rescue Team, they have, Blue Rescue Team DX. Like, so if you want to play that, you can. You just gotta, pay for the Switch game. Or have we reached the inflection point now with Switch Online expansion and Switch Online, where if a game isn't on there by now, does it mean we're not getting that game? That means that that game is going to be there's plans to remake it in the future. The only games because like Mario vs Donkey Kong is not on there because Mario vs Donkey Kong got remade. Like, is that where we are right now? I think that's kind of where we are. Where if the game is something that Nintendo can get the rights to, and it's not on there yet, I don't think it's like I think it's something they're going to hold on to it and remake later. Because like I could see them being like, oh, and we're gonna release, as a stopgap when the Switch 2 comes out while we wait for, you know, what's it called? While we wait for Mario Kart 9 or Mario Kart whatever they call it. Like while we wait for that, we're gonna do what's it called? We're gonna put out like like do we get Diddy Kong Racing HD early in the Switch 2's life cycle as a stopgap until Mario Kart comes? Is that what this is? And at this point, why is Diddy Kong Racing not ported? And you can't say, oh, well, with Diddy Kong Racing DS, it's like, well, no, they're not going to, that's not the same thing. Um, Now, the Pokemon mainline games, I can kind of get the issue, because, like, number one, I don't think they don't port Red, Blue, and Yellow because of Let's Go, because they're the two very different games, in tons of ways. And that also doesn't give why they haven't ported, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire, Red, Leaf, Green. Like, why hasn't that been ported yet? And or brought to that console? I think the reason is they can't figure out a way to connect it to bank, and I don't think they want to have a Pokemon game that is quote unquote mainline that you cannot move to bank without you know in that way. They want to have that connectivity. If they can't get that connectivity, they don't want that. And that kind of would explain why we still don't have those yet. Pinball's a weird one because that feels like such an easy win to just port Pokemon Pinball because it's like, who's really that committed to it? Where it's like, oh, I wanted to see this remade, like, or is there another Pokemon Pinball coming down the line that they don't want to have that up there? That could be the case too. And that was the only franchise that I think was conspicuously missing from this direct. I mean, Animal Crossing they're not going to announce until we get to the Switch 2, because that will be a Switch 2 title. Mario Kart, same thing, because we're done with the booster pass. Um, Pikmin, we just had Pikmin 4. They're not going to do anything else until that comes to the new franchise. Mario was there, Metroid was there. I mean, Smash, same thing. That's not going to be there until the next console. Pokemon's the only one that had really no presence at all here, which is kind of weird. Now, I get that the reaction last year to, what's it called, to uh, Charlotte and Violet, understandably was not positive. Like, no Z-A at all. Like, I'm sorry, I forgot where I was. I was answering a text. Um, they're the only ones who don't have a presence, and they have Z-A next year. Z-A may be a launch title, it may be a Switch title, who knows? We'll see when that comes. But no presence for that, which is weird considering like every other year the Nintendo Direct had something big. Like I'm thinking back to like 2013 when or was it 2013? Yeah, it was 2013 with X and Y. The Nintendo Direct had the reveal of the fairy type for Sylveon. Like that was a big moment for it. It was the first new type since Gold and Silver. To not have any presence feels weird, even for a spin-off, even for like it like not even news about Unite, not even news about something coming to Go, not even news about something coming to Sleep, or something or like anything like that. It's such a weird like dearth of information that I'm like, why is there nothing? Um and because that's the thing is that it's like, look, I was surprised. And it's like you don't bring anything. That's the really weird thing is that the franchise had nothing there. And to that end, I'm like, well, why? Like there's more of a presence for a Sony property with Horizon, which didn't have any presence at Sony's presentation, but it had a presence here. It's such a bafflingly weird thing because it was at SGF opening night live, but it was not at Sony State of Play, but it's here. Like the Marvel vs. Capcom collection looks fantastic. I'm probably gonna pick that up. That might be on the release calendar for us. Who knows? That had a bigger presence to the Pokemon franchise, like Disney Illusion Island, which is of course a Switch exclusive, like Hello Kitty Island Adventure. Uh, that was in there. Like Butters' favorite game, it is in there. No Pokemon, which is so weird to me. Because like that's the thing is that it's like right now we're going through in our main episodes where we talk about all of the Pokemon games and we rank them against each other. And right now we're at the end of Gen 3, getting into Gen 4. Pokemon Dash is the next game we're going to cover. And the big thing about this era of Pokemon is that they got experimental with the hardware and they got experimental with the titles. Not everything was a hit, but you got a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting new franchises. Like you get all experimental with even the RPG formula for like Coliseum and XD when you get into like, Mystery Dungeon, which gets into roguelikes, you have pinball, you have, the puzzle games, you have Ranger, which is kind of the same thing, but with a different fundamental gameplay mechanic. And then you get into to Gen 4, which we haven't gotten to yet, but you get more Mystery Dungeon. You get, Rumble is introduced in Gen 4. Like, you have all of these little side things. None of them have a presence this year. There was nowhere you could get that in and be like, oh, well, here's a new Mystery Dungeon game. Oh, here's a new Ranger game, because that franchise has been dormant for such a long time. Oh, here's a port of Coliseum and XD, which I get is niche, and I'm probably the only one who wants it, but, it is what it is. Or even like, look, let's be honest about the remakes. I don't think a remake, especially one that's being outsourced to another company, is something that you need to, build up for a full year of hype in the same way that they do with their other things. Like, I don't think you need to do that because fundamentally we know what the game is going to be. It's going to have upgraded graphics to be basically the same thing as the game we've been playing, for years. Um, so look, I get it. You don't have to do that to that end, why not have a remake come out this year that's being handled by another studio? So like you could be like, and look, I'm not wishing this on because I number one don't want to hear the griping from people that we got after Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which I didn't hate, but a lot of people did. I just don't want to hear it. Like I think the same goes for like Let's Go. If you were to dump a Let's Go out this year, like Let's Go Johto, you would not need to hype it up for a full year. You could be like, oh, by the way, because like look, if Nintendo is launching a new Mario and Luigi game with under 6 months, I mean about 3 months notice, or if they're launching another Mario Party with 3 months notice, or even Metroid Prime isn't getting a full year in the hype cycle, do we need to get a full year in the hype cycle for a remake or a Let's Go game? No, you can dump that out and say, oh, by the way, this is coming in November. Here's Let's Go Johto with, I don't know, Marl and Togepi, and, there it is. Like, that's an alternative. Like, you could do that and just be done with it. Like, that would be a game that you could have dumped out this year, but it's weird that there's nothing like that. I think that was a Game Freak. Like the other studio that did, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, if they did a remake for the Switch of, like, I don't know, Sun and Moon, which is fairly recent, but like, look, we're getting remakes of fairly recent games. That's just the state of the industry now. Or if they did a remake of Black and White, or if they did a remake of what's it called, of one of the further back games, like even if they did Gold and Silver as a remake, or if they did a remake of Red and Blue, like, why, like, where's that? Or outsource these early games, and I think this is the most likely outcome. And we'll wrap up with this. I think the most likely outcome that we're at with Pokemon and remakes, especially the remakes prior to Gen 4, where it's pixel art 2D. I think the most likely outcome is they get released as HD 2D in the way that, like, Dragon Quest is being done, and those kind of games. I think that's the most likely thing. This HD 2D trend is catching on. I think that's where we're going to end up with these games. Otherwise, even if it is these games can't transfer, if you put that disclaimer on, I feel like you'd be fine. Like, these games will not transfer into your mainline games. These are just for historical purpose. And I realize that, like, with a direct as strong as this one, like, I think, actually, we'll wrap up on this. What does this mean for when the Switch 2 launches? I think that we have one more direct that is not Switch centric, but kind of hybrid Switch 2, which will lay out the launch lineup for the Switch 2 and all of that. I think that will also line up the release dates for some of these games that are set for 2025 but don't have dates yet, namely Z-A and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. In that, they can also announce the launch lineup for the Switch too. I think that's a solid, thing. I think that the question is, does Metroid Prime become a launch title? And then if so, where does it fall? I think we're looking at this as, does the release slate for 2025 fall? I think we're looking at early 2025, because I think, if I remember correctly, they've confirmed fall 2025 for GTA 6. I think GTA 6, doesn't matter who you are, you want to stay as far away from that as possible. I think we're looking at, like, even if it's early summer for the Switch 2, um, that's where it's gonna be. And then you can put, like, around this time. I think by this time next year we will have our Switch 2s and we'll be playing them. But like I said, that's as good a place as any to wrap up for today. Our next episode will be later this week. We talk about Pokemon Dash, and then until then, have a great rest of your week.